Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makul with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two very important stories and two very important dynamics for Pakistan as well. The first is with reference to what is going on in the economic situation of the country, something of course that is of much concern, has been especially since the start of this year as well. And then of course, with regards to the kind of political uncertainty that this entire year has witnessed, and then the devastating floods that hit the country, due to which we have suffered immensely and still are trying to recover from, has impacted the economic conditions, and because of that there is a lot of concern as to how we are going to proceed forward, what sort of options exist on the table. The government, of course, since it came into power, has been trying to make tough decisions, to act and to respond in a way which is in the benefit of the country, considering the options that were available and the kind of situation that the government inherited. But we also are going to take a look at what is the result of those decisions and how moving forward we're going to be able to evolve and devise further strategies as to how to deal with it. There was a lot of concern with regards to the controversy around the rescheduling of the talks between Pakistan and the IMF, something of course in which again many reasons were speculated. But at the end of the day, the talks are still continuing, and we need to make sure that the kind of factors that are impacting the economic conditions and the kind of decisions that need to be made are coming in from the experts who know what they're doing and who understand what sort of requirements exist right now to take Pakistan out of this track and to make sure that it goes towards a better economic future. Other concerns, of course, with regards to where Pakistan stands among the international community, how various factors are contributing to Pakistan's position right now, how internally also the political dynamics is impacting the economic conditions is going to be in the focus of our discussion, and we're going to try and understand where we stand at the moment and how we're going to go ahead from here. In our next segment, we're going to take a look at Pakistan's foreign policy and its relations with various countries. Of course, the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari addressed a press conference in which he talked about the 6 months performance of the Foreign Office and said that the emphasis, of course, has been on deepening bilateral engagements with various stakeholders. And of course, amid the controversy around the US and with reference to what the PTI chairman and the former Prime Minister, now taking, of course, a back turn on that, has claimed to be part of how he was ousted from power, impacted US-Pakistan relations. But the foreign minister now says that the US-Pakistan relationship has been dehyphenated and that there is going to be progress, and we've always enjoyed historic relations with the US. We're also going to be, of course, taking a look at other key elements and key relationships in the region as well, particularly in reference to Afghanistan and other important factors within Pakistan, also in terms of the kind of spike in terrorist activities that we've seen in the country, and how to what the foreign minister said it needed an internal look towards what is going on, what our policy and strategies are, and where we can learn from and perhaps evolve in a better way in terms of dealing with the threat at home as well. So that's going to be the focus at the end of our show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analysts Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined online for our first segment with regards to the economic conditions by Dr. Hakan Najib, who's the former advisor of the Ministry of Finance and, of course, an expert on economic affairs. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakan, for joining us and being a part of the debate. First of all, we'd like to perhaps understand and get some clarity as to where we stand right now, since, of course, as always, there's a lot of speculation. We keep on hearing the words such as default, such as, high risk that Pakistan currently seems to be facing in, that the country needs a lot of help, and that perhaps there are many reasons as to why these talks with the IMF have been rescheduled. If you could give us firstly some clarity in terms of what really is the risk assessment in terms of a default, and then also the reasons behind the rescheduling of the IMF talks, and then moving forward, of course, in terms of how Pakistan wants to proceed in the recent months, what sort of options are on the table, how bleak the situation is, or how far away from reality seems to be what people are thinking.
Sana and Batafi Saab, thank you for having me on PTV World. It's always my pleasure to be on your show. By no stretch of imagination are things not difficult, economic challenges not real, and risk at a heightened level than one would like it to be. Pakistan came in before the floods in a difficult, challenging situation on the balance of payments, which means what we were saving after our imports minus exports minus remittances, which is the current account deficit, which was heightened. And then came the floods, which put the country in an even more difficult position. Um, right now, if we fast forward, the June estimates, which were agreed with the funds, have become a little outdated. And the reason for that is mainly floods and the emerging international global picture of a slowing international global economic situation, and the commodity super cycle, which has become better, but not really slow to that extent. What has
Right.
that done? So our macro framework has been agreed with the fund in June with the IMF. That has completely changed. But that now has to be based on the flood estimates that the country makes. And we did make some flood estimates. You saw a report with the EU, with bilateral partners, with the multilateral partners, of about 30 odd billion dollars. But of course, there were the data is not wholesome, because you had to do some extrapolations. Where we stand with the fund now is that there is a realization on both sides that to get into the solid technical discussions that we do with the fund, the authorities have to put some credible numbers on the macroeconomic framework in 4 or 5 areas. What are the flood estimates? How will that change the spending that we need to do? What are the growth estimates? How will that change the kind of revenue that the country will make? What kind
Right.
of exports are we looking at? We had started with an estimate of $36 billion dollars. The figures that I have seen for the first 4 months and actually for the first 2 weeks of November paint a weakening picture. And if we make more than $30 billion dollars, that would be probably the baseline scenario. So we are suffering on the exports as well. So when you
Right.
put all these things together, Sana, you get a new macro and fiscal picture together, which the country is trying to build. One would have hoped that we would have built it till 3rd of November, when the official date of the IMF negotiations were to start. The
Right.
delay in negotiations for a country, whether that's Pakistan or any other country that I advise, I always say brings a challenging situation on your foreign exchange reserves, which are now barely $8 billion. And please
Yeah.
remember that we have had 1.5 billion from ADB, we have had 1 billion from IMF. Even after that, we've had to make payments. So we are in, not overly comfortable position there. At the same time, you want to make sure that the other monies keep flowing in, and for that, staying with the IMF is the best scenario. IMF
Right.
is the anchor that will keep you out of becoming Sri Lanka today.
Absolutely, Dr. Saab, and I'm glad that you have presented a very comprehensive picture. But there seems to be something very interesting going on regarding this estimate that you brought up, regarding the flood, monies that might be needed for flood rehabilitation and whatever is going on. Later in the program, I want you to also comment on the veracity or dependability of the number that has come up from the donors, that is World Bank, because usually it is thought that World Bank perhaps might be, because it is donor, might give numbers that may not be reliable. The second issue, but since you spoke about foreign currency reserves, is that whenever the reserves dip or there is a dip in reserves, the economists start raising alarm. Next month, there's going to be a payment of $1 billion, which is maturing. Do you think that we are still in the same safe zone and there's nothing to worry about right now?
So let me take the difficult question first. By no stretch of imagination, is there a concern on the Pakistan's ability to pay this? but at $8 billion, and another 500 million coming in very soon from the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. And hopefully, no big payment between now and 5th of December. I think it is almost a comfortable fact that Pakistan will make that payment of $1 billion. Having done this a number of times in the government, I think we are on schedule, and in no way will we let this payment go off. So that's for sure. But certainly the foreign fund managers don't think so, and that's why the credit default swap, which is kind of a risk rating of a country, you can say, has risen for Pakistan. But I always keep saying that's not the only metric that should be seen. It's a thinly traded instrument, but Pakistan will make that payment. Pakistan has never ever defaulted on commercial or a payment on bond, and I think Pakistan will make this payment.
Very
By
true.
that time, there is another billion or so, which we are hoping will be repurposed by the World Bank, and that's very important. But your
Yes.
first question is equally more important, and whenever you want that, why is there a delay in this data set, and we can discuss it later.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
Dr. Hakan, you being an economist, of course, we keep on giving, examples from the other countries. Obviously, you mentioned about, how we can save ourselves becoming next Sri Lanka. But what about we giving examples about India's economy in the 90s? Of course, it was nearly, bankrupt. And if we talk about Turkey, similar was the condition of Turkey's economy back in 90s, but they came up with a roadmap, and of course they have followed it, and now with the help of political stability in their country, they have achieved a sort of stability when it comes to economy. Uh, Being an economist, what would you advise to Pakistan to have a roadmap, and how many years would it take to stabilize our economy, number one, and how crucial the factor of political stability is when it comes to economy, sir?
And I'm glad that he asked this question, Dr. Saab, because I also wanted your comment regarding what is going on media. Most people or pundits we listen to keep on talking about the need for political stability, but it seems that political stability, no matter what, regarding elections or whatever, is going to produce some kind of economic stability only for one fiscal year. And our burden might be bigger than that. What would you say to that, whether any election or any kind of political stability will help in this regard, or national consensus will?
And let me also add to this, considering, of course, that we keep talking about political stability, and that may be an important factor or an important requirement towards economic progress as well. But keeping in mind the kind of instability that we have seen over the past months or years also, perhaps, is that being taken into account when you're still formulating any sort of steps ahead with regards to the kind of economic aspects that are taken into consideration, or steps that are required for this particular improvement in the economy? Or will you be taking a real assessment as to considering in the political instability as well, and then making the decision, so that irrespective of the instability, we might be able to have at least some sort of structure?
So all very good questions and deep questions. So, the first question is that we have been talking till now how to pass FY23. IMF is a doctor of the last resort. This is not to cure the underlying ills. What India did in 1990, you must remember, India took a very, very different point of view. They finished the license Raj in India and went on to become a market economy. This was a big change in the way they thought about it, in the way they structured the economy, and the economy moved to a different equilibrium. So, moving on, this is where Pakistan has to now, for the next 2 to 5 years, at least make a plan to, of course, not only in Pakistan's case, it's not the license Raj which is the issue now. In Pakistan's case, it is our agriculture productivity, it is our industrial productivity. it is the productivity of people, it is the way we can send people abroad and earn our remittances, it's the way we can export stuff. So that is the model that Pakistan has to take into account. Of course, the license Raj, Pakistan has done a lot of work there, but of course, a regulatory overhaul, which you hear in easy ways of explaining as ease of doing business, will be there. But that's the framework that now we have to start thinking once we get the $32 billion for this year, sail through unscathed. Point number two about political stability. Again, India can be an example to look at. One thing that has stayed in India stable is there has been some order in terms of the democracy. So, of course, uh, look, political certainty is more important than political instability. It's not that the opposition or the ruling party should not voice their concern on media, but the path to an election should be visible and agreeable as per the constitution of Pakistan, but more so as agreed by the large political players and the actors in Pakistan. I have said today you need a charter of certainty, because of charter of economy is, in my opinion, difficult to do because every political party has a different agenda. I've worked with People's Party, I've worked with PMLN, I've worked with PTI, I talk to the small parties as well. Their thought process could be different, and that's fine. What is important is the charter of certainty, how the country will move for the next 6 to 8 months in terms of the political architecture
Right,
of the
and Dr.
country.
Khakan, that sounds quite nice, but in terms of actually achieving that, it will still require consensus, and that's still difficult to achieve. So I don't understand how you can achieve that easier in a more easier way than perhaps a charter of economy or a charter where you see consensus.
And even if you actually pull off that miracle, what is going to be the shelf life of that miracle itself? Is it going to impact economy for 5, 6 years, or is it only going to bail us out of only one fiscal year?
Right now, Pitafi Saab, the seriousness of where we stand on the economic front is so high in my mind, at least. Inflation at 27, 28%, food inflation even higher than that, reserves at $8 billion. The world economy is slowing down. If I was a political actor, I would run pillar and post and sit with everyone and at least have certainty to the markets so that this jitteriness goes away correctly for 1 year. No, till the next election, even whenever they happen. For 1 year, or short of that, whenever the elections happen, then we, as citizens of Pakistan, ask the next party, the next PDM, the next PTI, whoever the people want to vote in, what is going to be the first question that we answered, the modicum of order in the country, the real political, economic, and social reforms that we need to do. What is the
Right, and
But
next
Dr.
absolutely,
priority?
Saab,
and
sorry to cut you. Dr. Saab, is it not merely because you're talking only about 1 year? Is it not tantamount to kicking the can only down the or the road or down the lane? Because after a certain time, once again, we are going to be faced by the similar kind of problems. Over to you, Sana.
right, I was just going to take a short break, so we're going to be back after that.
Okay.
Welcome back to the debate, and we're talking about the economic condition of the country, and speaking to an expert, Dr. Hakan Najib has joined us. And Dr. Hakan, earlier before the break, we were talking about the kind of political stability that's required, and you talked about how perhaps there may be some sort of certainty or protection that can be offered to the economic conditions from the political instability. But I still have to understand exactly how that is going to be developed, and what sort of a protection can you really offer from the kind of political concerns that exist, because inevitably they are bound to impact your economic decisions.
So let me give you a practical example of what I mean. A practical example would be that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince coming into Pakistan should be met by all political parties at the airport. For me, that's charter of certainty in Pakistan because he's a welcome guest in Pakistan. So is the Chinese premier if he has to visit, or the Chinese president, or any other dignitary from whom what you are seeking is a $3 billion deposit in the country at a time where your reserves are barely $8 billion. You're seeking $2.4 billion in deferred oil payments. You're seeking for China to reconsider the $23 billion loan that they have to you. For the next 1 year, my charter of certainty is very simple, that when these people arrive, everyone at the airport should pick them up, everyone at the airport should be present, and everyone should make way for them to come to Pakistan and make their case of helping us through this 1 year, so that our dependence is more so on our friends and less so on others. That would
All
be
right.
for
Very true.
me a clear charter of certainty right now.
Exactly. Dr. Hakan, if we look at, I was going through earlier the annual price hikes, the rates. Obviously, if we talk about this year, it was 27.3%. And if we talk about the last year, it was 9.5%. And 2018, it was 5.8%. You earlier talked about the international economy is slow. That is why Pakistan is feeling obviously an impact of that as well. How big the impact of the domestic economy getting slow, if it gets slow, will be to our economy, especially in these sort of price hike rates. Then of course the our domestic economy gets affected by whenever the hikes are so high that people are trying to save money rather than putting that through in the economy, sir.
And by the way, because that is so, what do you say about the shrinking middle class and perhaps rising number of the poor in the country?
So one thing to remember is that there is a global inflationary impact. Pakistan feels more of it because we have also lost value in our dollar versus the rupee, and when that happens, the oil prices go up, or the coal prices go up, or the aluminium prices go up, or the wheat prices go up. But when you import them, the impact on the common man is much higher. So that that's also driving your inflation. Secondly, that's an important factor to keep in mind. Number two, look, the economy is already slowing. Look at the automobile sector. How much of the automobile has been closed? I am hearing numbers on the textile front also slowing. Textile is a big employer in Pakistan. So is automobile. So these two industries, you can see signs of slowing. You can see the large-scale manufacturing has shrunk. You can see agri productivity is down, floods as well as other reasons. So all in all, these hurt the employment situation. The 26, 27 odd percent of inflation that is in the country hurt, Patafi Saab, what you're asking, the buying power. And this time, actually, Patafi Saab, it's not only the low income people. They are hurt more because why are they hurt more? And, friends, this is very important to understand. Their 50% of their income is going on buying food stuff. And if the food
Exactly.
items are going up, that hurts them the most. In your and more affluent classes, you're spending 10 to 30%. So your hurt is probably less compared to their hurt. But
Yeah.
now, what Padafi Saab asked, middle class is hurt. Why is it hurt? Because the cost of energy, because of the international pricing, and because, of course, I have no qualm in saying that as a country, as a policy maker, I included, having been in the government, we have not been able to solve the energy efficiency issue of this country for decades, and our reliance on international borrowed and bought energy has increased. Both these factors are hurting the country's cost of doing business and the overall competitiveness.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Farooq, I believe you wanted to add something.
I just wanted to actually, solicit Dr. Saab's opinion as well, but let me actually slide in my own brief comments as well, because the state of affairs in this country is that every time there's a huge transition in the country, whenever one regime is ended and a new one starts, you know, that is the time when our economy goes haywire. We saw General Musharraf's economic stability that continued for quite some time. And all of a sudden, when his power was leaving him, right? At that time, suddenly the economy took a plunge and it took, you know, months and months to stabilize it. So much so that even our bourses, Karachi Stock Exchange at that time, we had to actually put in a floor to ensure that it doesn't actually doesn't go kaput. Later on also we have seen that after PMLN was leaving power and PTI was coming, once again similar kind of humongous plunge. And now once again it seems that because your national media is obsessed about only one thing, and that is you know, army chief's you know, new army chief and his appointment and what Imran Khan Sahib is going to do. Suddenly we realized that we have forgotten 33 million people who are even right now helpless because of floods, and we have stopped paying attention to you know, economy. So Dr. Saab was talking about charter of certainty. I would say that we have to have a charter of focus on economy as well, because all the demons keep on breeding in darkness, Sana. And that is why if media is paying attention, there will be somebody who is actually manning the outpost and taking care of these issues. Having said that, the question that I wanted Dr. Saab to actually answer is about you know, charter of economy. You said certainty, of course, that is important. But if you were to, you know, highlight a charter of economy or put together a charter of economy, what items would be part of it? I understand that you were talking about political stability needed for welcoming foreign guests who might be actually bringing in foreign cash. But apart from that, public sector enterprises, SOEs, how much there is need to actually get rid of as many as possible, Dr. Saab? Is it not an important issue? Because it seems that we keep on losing money where we shouldn't be, and we should be actually making money.
So Patafi Saab, first what you said about the 33 million people affected by the flood, you know, it takes my breath away. We cannot even begin to realize, and we cannot forget them. And yes, media has not focused on this issue. And the foreign funding and the UN appeal and the COP27 have also had a weak response. And we can have a program on that and have a discussion. Coming on to the state-owned enterprises, 203 state-owned enterprises. I've written 4 books. They're all lying on the Finance Division's website. Number one issue, combine it with the emergency that I always say you need to put on the energy side. Sell your discos, get rid of them. They are the bone of contention. They cause the highest inefficiency. Why? Your collections are at 88%, 85%, 90%. So if you send a bill of 1500 billion in the country, 150 billion are lost right there. You know, nearly $700 million are lost a year. The inefficiency on the line losses. So, you know, I mean, start the surgery of the SOEs with where the bleeding is the most, and that's the energy sector. So that would be our first 2 orders of business. Put an agri-urgency in your country. I keep giving this example. 1.7 tons of per hectare of cotton is done in Pakistan, is produced in Pakistan. I know we talk about China, and we you know, like to talk about China, how they are helping or how they have developed. 9.1 tons per hectare. That is the kind of productivity gap that you have with countries that you want to be friends with, or are friends with, or are looking for help. So go there, get that would be my item number 2.
Right. Dr. Hakan, of course, the political uncertainty is one aspect, and that, of course, is something that you've addressed or considering how we're going to take into account. But there's also, of course, the kind of global concerns that you earlier pointed out, and the kind of factors that keep contributing to the economy of countries like Pakistan. And then, of course, on top of it is the devastating floods, which have had a huge impact. And this impact also trickled down into the conversations that we had earlier with the IMF as well, and the kind of relief or concessions perhaps that were offered. Can there be perhaps any sort of potential relief or concessions offered in the future as well, since even the fiscal deficit keeps expanding? Of course, there's a report that has come out from the World Bank. There is, of course, concerns of how Pakistan will still be able to recover from these losses, considering the kind of food security or health issues that we're now faced with in the aftermath of this climate change. And then also the impact that the kind of discussions that were held at the COP27 is going to have on our talks with the IMF and our ability to deal with these challenges. Of course, the issue of developing a global shield or a financial infrastructure to help countries like Pakistan is there, and that might be a contributor in the discussion forward.
So number one, what I'd be looking for in terms of the IMF is that we would need adjusters. Adjusters means that the kind of spending, let's say, I think if we've spent 103 billion rupees funneled through the income support program data that we have of 9 million families, if we have reached to them and given 25,000 rupees to them, this should not be counted in the fiscal deficit that the country has. So that's an adjuster. That the 103 billion is an aid in the time of a crisis that the country has faced on the flood situation. So I would be looking for more adjusters so that whatever is required for these people, for these displaced people, for the hurt people, for the pregnant women, for the medicines that have to go there, for the houses that need to be built, is fully adjusted in that way. IMF also has a facility called Rapid Financing Instrument, which they can help us with. They did so of 1.4 billion in COVID. I would be looking forward to that.
Right, absolutely. Right, Dr. Haqqan, stay with us. We'll take a short break and we'll continue the discussion. Welcome back to the debate. We're taking a look at the economic conditions of the country, and we'll also be taking a look at the foreign policy relations, considering, of course, that there has been a presser by the foreign minister who took a look at the past 6 months with regards to foreign policy decisions that Pakistan has taken. And there have been many, of course, with regards to our engagements with various countries. And considering the political instability at home, the kind of economic conditions that we're talking about, much, of course, has also contributed to the way that Pakistan's position has been impacted in the international community. An important decision, of course, earlier that came out was with regards to the FATF, in which, of course, Pakistan had a victory with the exit from the grey list. But Dr. Haqqan, considering, of course, that we were expecting perhaps a lot from this decision in terms of the kind of impact it's going to have on the country or our economic conditions, and unfortunately perhaps we were not able to reap the benefits from this decision as much as we would have liked. And this, of course, the reasons for this, of course, has been pointed out again towards the political situation in the country, among others. But can we say now that moving forward, eventually there is some sort of a response in terms of the way that we are now moving forward? Because, of course, this was a big thing for Pakistan. But eventually, when will we be seeing the kind of result that we had wanted to?
And Dr. Saab, very quickly, because it is not for the first time that we are seeing similar kind of situation. I remember every time we keep obsessing about something which is important, in the end, when we achieve that target, we don't see the kind of impact in the society or economy that was needed. One example is GSP Plus. That we fought for and we finally got for quite some time, and even then we didn't see that kind of uplift of economy. Similarly, FTAs, similarly all the bans being removed from various aspects, we don't seem to have that kind of impact. Why would that be?
And has it got a lot to do with the international economy getting slow, sir?
So FATF's been a very uphill battle for Pakistan. I mean, I've been on the table when we did this, 27 points, another 7 points, and running legislative changes, provinces. Look, I mean, it's like saying this that it does help us in a certain way. I'll give you an example. Let's think about it positively. Just a few years ago, we were running 13 to 15 billion dollars in the remittances. Today, mashallah, we are nearing, we did 30 billion, and hopefully, even with the slowdown, we should be somewhere close to that figure. Part of that comes from strengthening our laws. Part of that comes from moving from informal channels to formal channels. Of course, these are just signals, the fat of coming out of the fat of gray list. The real meat, of course, is our access to the investors, our access to the capital markets, our access to the international buyers. All these things require the kind of stability, hard work, putting together Pakistan's entrepreneurs together, having a stable balance of payments position, all the other ingredients, the constellation with the FATF will make a difference. But Afisa, we achieve one thing, but then there are many other periphery things or instruments that don't mesh with that, and we get into a similar balance of payments challenge that we keep getting into. And of course, today, this year, you may think that I keep emphasizing this. This year is a difficult global and very difficult and challenging local year. So keeping our heads down, and when the wind is blowing fast and going through it, is the best way forward. But next year are all the things that we've talked about. Take the benefit of FATF, improve your investment climate, move on agriculture, move on expanding your industrial base, move on improving your remittances that you get, do the surgery of the energy sector. And by that time, inflation globally would have slowed, interest rates would have come down. The last thing, if you allow me,
finish the thought, sir. Please go ahead.
Is that Patafi Saab, 31 to 33 billion dollars is what Pakistan needs to put together. When you need that kind of money, this would be the first time ever that we will put together that kind of money from foreign sources. Let's put our heads down, our hearts together, our minds on it, approach our friends and the multilaterals and IMF, get that money and sail through.
Right. Dr. Saab, one big concern why I raised this impact of these achievements or these milestones not reaching the common man is this impression, because we have been hearing in the past many decades that economy is performing really well. And then it seems that this net impact on the society, the kind of trickle down it could have actually generated is not there. So one would actually start thinking that perhaps Pakistan's economy is either not tethered to the society, or then it is structured in a way that it is not inclusive at all. That a few rich guys will get richer, and perhaps the state will not be in that dark or that kind of difficulty. But when it comes to reach or capacity of the common man on the street, it will do no good for them. So the concern repeatedly for GSP plus a humongous milestone. It should have. Bangladesh got huge boost because of that, and you have seen how their microfinance has reshaped the economy and how exactly they are flourishing. But it seems that whenever Pakistan achieves anything, it doesn't. Even General Musharraf's time, when we thought that we had huge financial window, we did not see that kind of capacity building of the common man or any boost in their purchasing power. Is it not true that somehow economic principles or theories stopped working in Pakistan?
And Dr. Khan, I'd just also like to add something to that. When we take a look at what you earlier said in terms of the kind of steps and measures that can be taken next year perhaps to improve the current conditions, there are certain things which are perhaps dependent on other things to be done for them to actually take effect. And I want to understand whether or not this is a possibility that Pakistan has in terms of taking action with, considering all of the rest of the factors factors that are contributing to the conditions. In terms of what the government is doing right now, have we exhausted our options to the maximum? Will be able to do all of the things that you've pointed out, irrespective of what goes on within and outside of the country?
So, Patafiza, first, and someday we can do a whole program on this. In all countries, especially the developing ones, there is a certain elite capture. Elite capture, an example in Pakistan that is very easy to understand is most of the people make money in real estate. It's the most lightly taxed sector in the country. So the rich keep becoming richer once they keep investing in new lands that become available to them. And so it's a very special kind of an elite capture where the elite are not even investing in the productive assets of the country, but in a very unproductive way to real estate.
And Dr. Saab, just very quickly, just to remind the viewers that you have been saying that our state actually puts in a lot of incentives for this kind of economies to be invested in. Is it not correct?
Patafi Sahab, because we've had discussions, and I'm so happy that you remember this. I am of that view. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
but Dr. Hakan, if we look at bilateral relations of Pakistan with the other countries, especially if we look at Pak-US relations, we know that they were strained, and now we can consider them dehyphenated right now, of course. And Pakistan is a country, it's one of the biggest export obviously goes to America. Now, after the 6 months of the current government's performance, of course we can say that the relations, the bilateral relations are normalized now. Do you see an increase in exports from Pakistan to US in this context? And what would you say about Pakistan having bilateral relations with other countries, and if we are having not good relations with the few of the countries, should we improve them to better our economy, sir?
So, Sana, your question remained unanswered. The answer is that right now we don't have a choice. I have done Pakistan's last IMF program. I've been on the table when we try and put this program together. We really don't have a choice but to put our heads together and ensure a smooth sailing. And you could see yesterday when the finance team spoke with the team in US how important this is, and then they even issued a communique to calm the markets. There is just no other option but to put our heads together, put our hearts into it, and get the fund program done. And as I keep saying, Saudi Arabia, UAE, China are your second order anchors, which you must use. Sana, I'm sorry. I mean, there is no choice. I wish there was. I wish I could say we could print some money and get over this, but not happening. Of course, we should slow our imports and all this, but still our need of $31 to $33 billion is intact. It's not going away. The US relationship. I've always said the US relationship or any relationship is not exclusive. The relationships that a country forms are based on trade, are based on what kind of foreign policy the other country is running, mutual interests, and so on and so forth. Of course, we have a diaspora in the US. It is a big trading partner. And it is also a big military trading partner for Pakistan, from F-16 to the other equipment that we use with them. So not by any stretch of imagination would we want a strained relationship. Of course, that relationship varies with our geostrategic importance. I think that's a very well-known fact now, vis-a-vis Afghanistan. And so it goes up and down, but now the relation should be commerce-based, and that's what the future should be.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakan, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Thank you, Farokh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. That's all that we have for now. We'll see you on Monday. Have a nice weekend.
Time